Hello, Algebra 2 students. So today we are going to begin our last part of quadratics. We're going to cover in this last week completing the square, the quadratic formula, and discriminants. So today we're going to talk about completing the square. Okay. So as a review, it says the square root of a number is this number that when multiplied by itself equals the given number. It's the inverse or undoes squaring something. So remember, the square root of 16 is 4, right? Because 4 squared gives me 16. And also, since we're going to do a little factoring as well, in a perfect square trinomial, since we're talking about perfect squares today, the quantity a plus b squared looks like a squared plus 2 times thing 1 times thing 2 plus thing 2 squared. Okay, so we're going to do some that are set up nicely for us, and then there are some that we're going to have to work a little bit more for. So if we're going to solve x squared equals 25, we're going to be solving today by taking square roots. And notice over here on the side it says when you introduce a square root yourself into an equation, you must consider the plus or minus. Okay, so on this one we have x squared equals 25. So to solve, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So x equals, since I introduced the square root symbol myself, I have to do plus or minus, and the square root of 25 is 5. So x equals plus or minus 5. And the second one, if I have x squared equals 9, again, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So x is going to equal plus or minus, the square root of 9 is 3. So those are ones that I would consider to be simple. Okay, if we continue on with some more examples here. So this next one we have is x plus 1 quantity squared equals 36. So I've got the squared part on a side by itself. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to have x plus 1 equals plus or minus, and then the square root of 36 is 6. Now I have two possible options here. So I either have x plus 1 equals positive 6, or my other option is I have x plus 1 equals negative 6, because again it's plus or minus, positive or negative. So in the first situation, if I subtract 1 from both sides, I get 5. And the second situation, if I subtract 1 from both sides, I get negative 7. So my two answers are 5 and negative 7. Okay, in the second one here, again, if I'm going to solve it, I need to take the square root of both sides. Since I've got the part squared already on a side by itself, we're good. So again, if we take the square root of both sides, we're going to have x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 25 is 5. So now again, just like the previous problem, I got two options here. So we're going to say x minus 2 equals positive 5, or we're going to say x minus 2 equals negative 5. So in the first situation, if I add 2 to both sides, x is going to be 3. In the second situation, if I add 2 to both sides, negative 5 plus 2 is, I'm sorry, this is not 3. What am I thinking? 5 plus 2 is 7. And then negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. So those are my two possible answers. Now, the next two that I'm going to do, we're going to have to factor it first as a perfect square. Okay, so on this one, if I think of 9 is 3 squared, right? And if I test it, thing 1 times thing 2, x times 3 is 3x. If I double it, I do get a 6x. So this is going to factor into x plus 3 quantity squared, again, equals 36. So next I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And this is going to be x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 6. Or I'm sorry, the square root of 36 is 6. So again, then I have two options here. I'm either going to have x plus 3 equals positive 6, or x plus 3 equals negative 6. In the first case, if I subtract 3 from both sides, that's going to give me a positive 3. In the second case, if I subtract 3 from both sides, that's going to give me a negative 9. So again, those are my two answers. Okay, if I look at the next one. So again, we have x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 25. So again, what squared gives me 4? That's 2. If I take thing 1 times thing 2, x times 2 is 2x. If I double it, that gives me 4x. So I'm good there. So since there's a minus in the middle, this is going to factor into x minus 4 quantity squared, again, equals 25. So to solve, just like we did the previous one, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to have x minus 2 equals plus or minus 5. And then now my two options, x minus 2 equals positive 5, or in the second case, x minus 2 equals negative 5. In the first case, if I add 3 to both sides, we're going to get, add 2 to both sides, we're going to get 7. In the second situation, if I add 2 to both sides, that gives me negative 3. So my two possibilities are 7 and negative 3. Okay, let's just skip the last one because I feel like we're doing fine right now. Next, we're going to do fill in the blanks to make each trinomial a perfect square. And then you're going to factor it. So the key to doing it, it's a perfect square if your C value is your B divided by 2 quantity squared, or taking a half of B and squaring it. So remember, your A and your B and your C come from AX squared plus BX plus C. So I'm looking at that B, that constant, or sorry, not the constant, the coefficient there. So in this one, my B value is 10. So to find the C, I'm going to take 10 divided by 2 and square it. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So 25 completes the square. And then this is going to factor into x plus 5 quantity squared. So you think about this number is coming from your b divided by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, on the next one. So again, my b value is negative 18. So I'm going to take negative 18 divided by 2 and square it. That's going to be negative 9, and negative 9 squared is 81. So this is going to factor into x. Again, what's negative 18 divided by 2? Negative 9, quantity squared. So again, on each one of these, you're finding your C value, and then you're factoring it. Okay, continuing on here, we have x squared plus 22x plus something. So again, I'm going to take my B value, which is 22, divided by 2, and square it. 22 divided by 2 is 11. 11 squared is 121. So this is going to factor into x. There's a plus in the middle. So 11 quantity squared. Now we're going to try some that are odd. So we're going to have some fractions in it. So in this next one, my b value is negative 7. So I'm going to take negative 7 divided by 2 and square it. So negative 7 divided by 2 can't happen unless you write it as a decimal. So this is going to be 49 over 4, because 7 squared is 49 and 2 squared is 4. So this is going to factor into x. There's a minus in the middle, and then that would be 7 halves quantity squared. Again, it's this b value. And then the last one, we have x squared plus 9x plus blank. So I'm going to take my b value, which is 9, divided by 2, and square it. So I cannot reduce that. So this is going to be 81 over 4, because 9 squared is 81, 2 squared is 4. So this is going to factor into x. Now I'm going to have a plus because there's a plus there. And then 9 halves quantity squared. So today we have a worksheet continuing in our packet. You're going to be doing this one here, lesson 9-4, day 1 worksheets. And we are going to go ahead and do all of them. Okay? If you have questions, please let me know.